Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Raina Ghazi, and I'm the Teacher Development Manager for Macmillan Education International Curriculum. Thank you so much for joining our webinar this afternoon. We are going to be focusing on creative writing and reading. Our literacy author and expert, Charlotte Rance, will be delivering the session. If you have any questions, feel free to write them in the questions box, which you will see on your side. Unfortunately, you won't be able to see each other's comments just because of the way the platform has been designed. However, we can read your comments. If you have any audio or technical issues, I'll do my best to try to direct you. But if there are any issues that are out of our hands, then I do apologise in advance. So I'm now going to pass it over to Charlotte. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Okay, let's check you can all hear me properly. Can you write in the question box where you are and what time it is with you? So where are you? What's the time? Let's have a look. How much of the world do we have? London, 4:30, just up the road from me. India, 9 p.m, 5:30 in Spain, 6:30 in Saudi, 5:30 in Cairo. I didn't know, lovely. 6:30 in Turkey. Goodness me, UAE, 7:30. We've got teachers all over the world right now, aren't we? Fantastic. Okay, well, welcome everybody. As you will see, my camera is not currently on. We've been having some issues today with the internet, so we're going to keep that off. But I promise I am a real person and I will be talking to you and answering your questions. You just can't see my face. Oh, 10:30 in Russia. Thank you, Irina. Which part of Russia is Irina in, I wonder? Because Russia has several time zones, doesn't it? Okay, irrelevant. Not the conversation we need to be having right now. We are here to talk about how we can turn reading into creative writing. So if you are ready, we're going to start with a simple yes or no question. I'm going to show you a few statements. If the answer is yes for you, then I want you to write yes in the box. If your answer is no, I want you to write no. Very, very simple. So question number one. Hi from New Jersey. Hello, New Jersey, USA. All right, number one. I enjoyed writing in school. Yes or no? Let's have a look. Okay, mostly yeses coming through. Mostly yeses. A handful of no's. Probably about 3/4 of you are yes. Not surprising that most of you are literacy teachers. Yes, most of the time, says Asma. Ah, interesting. I was never really taught how, says Rukaya. I hope you said your name right there. All right, statement number two. Nice and easy. Let's have a look. I enjoy writing in my free time. Ooh, yes, with multiple S's there. Really? No free time anymore, says Immaculata. Not surprising. Not for school, afraid not. Okay. I am a no on this one. I don't really enjoy writing in my free time. I like reading a lot, but writing for my free time, not so much. In class, yes. Okay. Number three then, I enjoy teaching writing. Now this is where we start to see more no's coming through. Okay. Oh, very, very excited yes there. Sometimes I like drawing. No, it's too hard, says Ina. It really can be sometimes, especially with the students. All right. Next statement. My students enjoy writing in class. Nope, nope, nope. A triple O no coming through there. Oh, that's at least 7 no's. Actually, they hate it, says Shalini. Yeah, it's a bit of a problem sometimes, isn't it? All right, here's the final one. My students like writing for homework. Not at all, says Tarveen. Lots and lots of no's, or come on, someone give me a yes. They hate it. Never. Not really. Yes. Hey, Razan, thank you. We have a yes. Depends on the topic. The Shalini goes, yeah, maybe. Okay. All right. So whenever I talk to teachers or students about writing, I always think of it very much as one of those vicious circles in the world. Teachers often don't like writing. And that can be from bad experiences in school. It can be from bad experiences as a teacher in school. Students often don't like writing. We don't really know if that's because of us as teachers or them as students, but a lot of the time there's a lot of negativity around classroom writing, and it's important that we recognise that. So today, this afternoon, evening, middle of the night, depending on where you are, morning for some of you, we're going to be looking at these 4 areas. So step 1, to write or not to write. What are the reasons for? What are the reasons against? Then we're going to be looking at some guided writing sections, some collaborative writing sections, and finally, my favourite area, correcting errors and giving feedback. So that is our little map of this afternoon. Let's get started. I'm going to show you several common complaints. These complaints, I'm not going to tell you if they are teacher complaints or student complaints. You can decide for yourself. But these are very, very common complaints about teaching writing in the classroom. It's time consuming. It's time consuming in the classroom. It's time consuming out of the classroom. I've always said that my worst nightmare is when I set my students a piece of writing homework and they all do it, because they complain, oh, teacher, it takes me 1 hour to do this writing. Student, it takes me 14 hours to mark it. Thank you very much. We often hear that students lack ideas and imagination. My students don't know what to write about. Teacher, I don't know, what is it about? I have nothing to say. I can't think of anything. And as teachers, we're often unsure of how to help our students improve. We find ourselves in a situation where again and again and again we see the same mistakes. We've talked about the problems in class before, we've highlighted them, but they don't seem to go away. We're also not always sure what to correct when they have so many mistakes in their work and we don't know where to start. You know, do we start with the things that they should know, or do we start with the things they don't know yet? We're going to talk about this later. Of course, in 2020, what we can also say is that students don't do much writing in their own free time. If we're teaching in an international context, probably they don't spend a lot of time writing in their first language. So when we come into the classroom as English teachers and we're asking them to write in English, that can be a huge challenge. And of course, these 2 at the bottom are definitely student complaints, I think. It takes too much effort to write, and it's often quite boring. So, if we admit, yes, all of these things are true, why should we teach writing? Well, the good news is there is a few good reasons for us to teach writing. And the first one is that written work is often an excellent measure of progress, and it can give us evidence of that progress. The students can see that their writing has improved, their sentences have got longer, there's less corrections on the page. We can also show this evidence to the people that run our schools. They will be able to see that progress is happening, that we as teachers are doing our jobs properly. And also we can show that evidence to the parents. It can go up on the walls of our classroom. We can send it home in writing portfolios, and parents love to see that. Of course, it also gives us the opportunity to produce language through a different medium. Most people study languages to enable them to produce language. And writing is another way of doing that. We write for people to read. Our next point is very much a teacher point. Writing increases the time that students spend working with language and getting language exposure. And as literacy teachers, exposure to language is the most important part for us. We can also say that teaching writing is necessary. Whether you are studying for GCSEs, IGCSEs, A-levels, international A-levels, an international baccalaureate, you are going to be expected to do a bit of writing in your exam. And when you're writing, you have to learn how. Writing is necessary for testing and exams. We also can recognize as teachers that the effort involved in writing is an aid to learning. When we write, we concentrate more. When we write, we correct ourselves more easily. If you make a mistake when you're talking, if you say the wrong word, maybe you'll go back and correct it. But chances are, if people understand you, you're not going to. In writing, however, we have a tendency to try and be more perfect. And I'm sure you all remember that first day of school feeling where you get your new notebook and you take so much care with your penmanship in the classroom, trying to make sure that the first page of your notebook is absolutely perfect. Did you guys do that, or is it just me? I'm not sure. Feel free to back me up by telling me in the question box that yes, I'm not the only one that does that. Every student tried to. Thank you, Denise. Good. And Lila remembers it as well. All right, maybe it's just us girls. Thank you. Oh, good. I do have that support. Okay, so another good reason to teach writing. Students can work at their own pace. They can take the time they need to spend on it, especially when it's homework writing. They can spend as long as they need. They don't have that same pressure as they do in the classroom when they're the last one to finish, if they're a bit more slow and a bit more careful at what they're doing. And if they're the first one to finish at home, that's not a problem either. They can work at their own pace. In the classroom, spending time on writing gives us the opportunity to put our individual attention on the students that need it. We can let our confident students go off and do their own thing, giving us the free time to monitor those that need a little bit of extra support. And my favourite reason for teaching writing in class, it gives us a little bit of quiet time, which often we need when we're changing the measure of the pace, especially with young learners. Getting our classroom quiet sometimes can be a real benefit to both the students and the teachers. Rukaya completely agrees. Quiet time is very important. Okay, and finally, what we can say for absolute certain when it comes to literacy is that writing is great consolidation for reading practice. Reading and writing are very much two sides of the same coin. You can't have one without the other. And this is a favourite quote of mine about this. Basically put, reading affects writing and writing affects reading. Reading plays a major role in writing, and at the same time, practice in writing helps children build their reading skills. We've got a little bit of agreement there in the chat as well. Yeah, absolutely. You can't have one without the other, and the better you are at one, the better you are at the other. So we need to make sure that we're giving these opportunities in class for that to happen. So let's move on. We're going to spend our first section looking at guided writing. Now, guided writing comes in many shapes and forms. Guided writing might be through using a model text. Guided writing might be through using a poetry model. Guided writing might be all of the students using the same image as a starting point. And it comes in lots of different flavours and lots of different varieties. So what I'm going to do for the next couple of minutes is have a look at some of my favourite guided writing activities that I've done in my classrooms with my students. Badrita has asked how writing affects reading. Essentially, it will help with visual literacy and visual literacy fluency as well. When we're writing, we're thinking about the shapes of the letters, we're thinking about the spelling of the words. We are able to expand, and within our brains, absolutely it triggers in all of the same places. Reading and writing, all stored in the same place. So yeah, when we read and we write, we're practicing both skills simultaneously. When we get better at reading, we get better at writing, and vice versa. So let's move on to a few guided writing activities. And this one is what I would call a bare bones story. So it is a writing skeleton. A short story for you. A girl lived in a house. She wants something. A letter arrives, she reads it, she goes out, she comes home. Does anybody recognize this story? Can anybody identify the famous story here? Oh, no, it's a very, very famous children's story. Not quite Red Riding Hood, pretty close, Rizwana. Wrong one, though. This one here belongs to Cinderella. It is Cinderella. There she is. She's a girl. She lives in a house. She wants something. What does she want? A letter arrives from the castle. She reads it. She goes out. She comes home. There is our Cinderella story. This is a very boring story. But what it is an opportunity for the children to expand on it and say what they know about it. So as a teacher in the classroom, I can say, okay, here's my story. It's not a very exciting story. Let's make it better. Tell me about the girl. Give me a few adjectives to describe the girl in this story. Yep, she is young. She is blonde, so we can add that into the story. A young blonde girl lived in a house. Oh, a pretty young innocent blonde girl. Lovely adjectives coming out. Lonely, that's a great one. Lived in a house. What's the house like? Is it big? Is it small? Is it old? Is it a castle? It's a grand house. It's a huge house. It's got lots and lots of wooden floors, and it's strange. Does she live on her own? Does she live with other people? And we can ask the children to fill in this information. As a class, in the classroom, this is very easy. We can get them in groups, we can get them working on it. They can come up with all sorts of lovely ideas. Dur thinks that she lives in a chalet. It is quite a sort of romantic idea. But this can be a little bit more complicated in the digital age. So up the top of the screen, you will see a link. This is a link to a website that I absolutely love. It's called Telescopic Text. And I will give you a quick demonstration of how this works. Now, it's important to remember that this is free to use. Nothing in here that you have to pay for. You can register for an account, and it'll let you work it, and it will let you save the text. So essentially, I'll show you how this works right now. When my thing catches up. So we start by typing in our basic bare bones story. A girl lives in a house. And as the teacher, you can do this in advance and send that link out. And you insert your basic text. And this is what you give to your students. Now, the amazing thing about telescopic text, when I click on a word, I can change that. So I can say, a young girl, and I can insert that. I can add more information. So I can say she's young and beautiful, and I can press insert. I can say, ooh, she lives in a huge house. Insert. And I can say, she lives in a huge house with her sisters. And insert. Now, I hand that over to my students. They can add in their extra thing. When I press the fold button up top, we go back to our original text, and you will see that there. But you'll notice that the words that I've edited have now been in grey, and when I click on them, I can unfold it. So a young girl lives in a house. A young beautiful girl lives in a house. A young beautiful girl lives in a huge house with her stepsisters. And yeah, it's a great tool in these digital times for students to be able to go in and to try expanding on a base text like this one. So yeah, all of those links are in the webinar slides that will be sent out at the end of this. I recommend going and having a play with it. And pyramid sentence, says Ala. Yeah, it's a really nice little tool to use in the classroom and online for homework and things. And of course, the kids can send theirs out to each other, email the links across, they can compare their stories, and you as a teacher can have a look and see what they are doing. All right, so another nice way of working with structured writing, with guided writing, is, as we said earlier, through images. And this next activity, when it pops up on the screen, is an activity taken from the Macmillan writing prompts boxes, and they are lovely. Hasti has asked a quick question about that. So using the bare bones story method, do you tell the students what the story is taken from, or do you let their imagination run wild? Both is my answer to that. Sometimes I will make up just the most boring story I can think of based on nothing. Sometimes if I'm getting to revise ideas, I will ask students to try and remember. And yeah, it depends on how much support you want your students to have, but both work absolutely fine. Okay, can anybody identify this animal? Tell me the name of this animal. Here it is. It's one of my favorites. Yep, there we go. It's a sloth. There we are. Somebody described it earlier as a lazy monkey. But no, it's a sloth. All right. And as I said, this is taken from the writing prompts box, and these are lovely sort of 5-minute writing activities. If you've got children who are hesitant to write in your classroom and they need a bit of support, these writing prompts are great for 5 5-minute activities. Oh, that's interesting. I've just learned. Mahdi has just taught me something. Apparently, in Iran, so I presume in Persian, it's called a lazy bear. Is that the direct translation? How exciting. I like bears. They're my favorite animal. All right. So what we would do with the writing prompts is give them some information and let their imagination go. So this one is wake up as an animal. And you can write about how you would move, what you do all day, and what you think about. We can let the kids go off, do some brainstorming, or we can get them to do some research, or we can get them just to use their imaginations and use a little 5-minute activity to write about that. They can use the picture on the card, or we can let them choose their own animals. We can give out animals. But yes, it's a little activity that they can use. A little 5-minute activity. All right. Now, again, we're living in a slightly strange, largely digital world, and we need to figure out how we can do this online. A couple of websites that I would recommend for this are Story Jumper and also Write Reader. And these two, again, they are excellent resources. They've also both got very, very good teacher resources for working out how you can use it in classroom and ideas for different lessons that you can use. But essentially, both of these websites, again, free access, are designed for making picture books, so encouraging students to make their own picture books. And this is a really nice way of getting that digital presentation aspect into the classroom. So if they're writing about a sloth, they can find lots of different pictures of sloths, and they can put a different picture on every page, and they can write a sentence about every single picture. And then they can share their books, and you can, it comes slightly animated, so it looks like you're flipping through the digital book. They can use their own pictures. They can use pictures they found on the internet. They can use drawings. They might want to write about their own pets and all sorts of lovely things that you can do. But it's a very simple tool for letting children present their writing digitally. And as I said, both free to access, free to use. So do go and have a look after the session. Okay. Please excuse me. Sorry. I need to drink some tea. Talking too much. All right. So my next little piece of guided writing comes in terms of format. Letters have a very, very set structure. As we all know, there is a correct way and an incorrect way to write a letter. Of course, I don't remember the last time I wrote a letter, and I would imagine that a lot of our students don't see many letters in their lives anymore. So if we are still using letter formats as a test and part of the examinations, then we need to be able to teach them in a way that makes sense. And for me, 3 things that I like to do that can be really beneficial. First of all, get your students to write a letter to themselves. It can be a letter to themselves in the past. It can be a letter to themselves in the future. But it's a wonderful way of building confidence, of creating a safe and comfortable atmosphere in your classroom, getting in touch with yourself in the classroom, addressing your concerns about things. I always use it at the beginning of term. So I get my students, I usually use it with sort of 4th graders around the upper end of primary when they have a bit more language, and I will say to them, okay, write a letter to yourself and tell me what you want to learn this year. Talk to yourself about what your hopes are. And then at the end of term, you can get those letters out of the cupboard and they will be able to address what they said at the beginning of term. They can look back, they can remember. Yes, and as Salma is saying, you know, it doesn't have to be done as a letter. It could be done as an email, a message, or a tweet. And all of these have their own different structures and formats Tweets are a great thing to work with in the classroom because they are limited to characters. So, you know, can you retell the story in the length of a tweet? Anything that provides a structure can be done. Yes, as Layla says, this is like a time capsule. They love it. Yeah. And yes, I can see that Livan has been asking about the links. So they will all be sent out to you at the end, Livan. You can have a look in your own time after the session. You will get the links through, I promise. Of course, some students don't want to write to themselves, so maybe they want to write to you. It can be a great opportunity for the teacher to get to know your students a little bit better. Get them to write an email about their favorite things, or write a letter to you about their weekend or anything. And absolutely engage with what they are saying. They can write letters to their parents and grandparents, absolutely. Or if you want to bring it back to your reading lessons, when you finished writing, when you finish reading your class book, get them to choose a character from the story and write them a letter. And this is one that can easily be turned into a pair work activity. So student A writes a letter to the character in the book. Let's say maybe they are writing to the stepsisters in Cinderella. Why were you so mean to Cinderella? Why were you so jealous of her, etc., etc. Student B then can take that opportunity to write back, to write a response, to use a bit of imagination. So if I am writing to Cinderella, then my partner can be Cinderella and write a response to me. And it's also a great way of reviewing what they've learnt through their reading. For us as teachers, measuring their comprehension and understanding as well. Pair work, write to an evil and a good character. Ooh, lovely idea there, Salma. You are all wonderful. I agree with so many of you. It is such a shame that you can't see each other's comments. Okay, fabulous. So moving on from our guided writing to a bit more collaboration. We've already started talking a bit about pair work, but collaborative writing can be a real benefit in the classroom. For teachers, it gives us less to mark. It saves us a bit of time. If we've got 16 students in our class and we only get 8 pieces of writing because they've written in pairs, that's great. If we've got 20 students in our class and they've done writing in groups of 4, that only gives me 5 pieces of marking to do. As you will notice, I can be quite a lazy teacher. But also, as Salma has said, peer assessment, fantastic. Farhana is stunned that 30 students. Yeah. Okay. All right. Yes, it does give them the chance to share their ideas. So when our students, oh, teacher, I can't think what to write. I don't know. What can I say? You've got 2 heads are better than 1. So this is a lovely little activity. Again, this is one taken from the writing prompts box, and this is a pair work activity. So as we know, in any story, everything seems to be going perfectly well, and then there's a problem. And then we fix the problem, and then there's another problem. That's how stories work. When we're learning about stories, we have a beginning, we have a middle, we have an end, and in the middle, there are problems and solutions. So this is an activity that practices that skill, and it's called Get Me Home. The instruction is, you wake up in the middle of the desert. You need to get home. How are you going to get there? And it's a pair work activity. So student A comes up with ideas of how they're going to get home. This student says, I jump on the camel and ride through the desert in the direction of my house. Student B provides the problems. Student B says, the camel gets tired and it stops moving. Student A then has to overcome that problem. So student A might say, I get off the camel and give him some food, and he he starts getting his energy back, so I jump back on and we can ride again. And then maybe student B says, the owner of the camel comes and says, why have you stolen my camel? Get off my camel, and takes it away. Now, okay, says student A, I walk through the desert in the direction. You get lost, says student B. It's all about creating that chain. A sandstorm might come. Absolutely. So there's lots and lots of problems that could possibly happen, but the idea is that the students pass that sentence back and forth to each other. They write those sentences. You can also do it as a speaking activity, but a writing activity is much easier because it gives the students the time to talk. In our digital world, if you need something for collaborative writing pieces, Google Docs is an absolute blessing. Just simply save your document up there, give the links to the people that need it, and they can both access and edit on the same document. Okay, my next collaborative writing activity, my absolute favourite, circle writing. I'm sure that you have all done a bit of circle writing in your time. You can do it with the whole class, you can do it with small groups, and it can be done with absolutely any text type. At Halloween, I love to do a little writing activity where my students write silly stories with a horror theme. So, my teacher is a vampire, or werewolves in the school, or the ghost in the bathroom, if you want to go a bit Harry Potter. And yeah, it can be done with any form of text as well. So it doesn't have to be story writing. It can be instructional or informational texts. But all that we need to do is pass those around. So each member of the group starts one story. They pass their story left. The second person reads and continues that story. And it keeps going in a circle until it comes back to the original author. Yeah, absolutely lovely. And the benefit of it, you know, they are working collaboratively. They are sharing ideas. One student might write something crazy and the next student has to figure out what the next step is. And it takes away the pressure on the students that don't like writing so much. Victoria says it's fun if they fold the paper each time. It can be. It can become very unpredictable. So you can just let them read the last 2 or 3 words that the person before them wrote and they have to continue writing on that way. If you want the stories to make sense, let them read it. If you just want them to get some writing practice, fold it up and let them go. Absolutely fun. And again, in our little digital situation, for those of you that are teaching from home at the moment and you're teaching online classes, again, you can use Google Docs to put that up there so they can just pass that along to each other. Everybody can log into the same document and write that out. Another small group activity that's a lot of fun for collaborative writing is this one. So this is an activity called Scrawl. It's based on a board game that I love very much. And essentially, every student begins with a picture. Every student begins with a picture. So, Sarah, I've seen your question. I'm going to come back to it at the end, if that's okay. All right. So give each student an image and ask them to write a sentence about it. It could be, you know, every student has to have a different image. It might be a drawing, it might be a photograph, it might be a picture from the storybook that you have just been writing in class, depending on how much structure and support you want to give to the students. Student number 1 takes the picture, looks at the picture, and writes one sentence on a different piece of paper. Student 1 passes that sentence, that description, to student 2. Student 2 reads the sentence and draws a picture of it. Student 2 gives the drawing to student 3. Student 3 looks at the drawing and writes a sentence, and so on and so forth. When we were kids, we all played the game telephone or Chinese whispers or whatever it was called where you were. So that that message going through, it changes as time goes on. I am a terrible artist. When I draw a picture, nobody knows what I'm drawing. So the sentence that you see is crazy. And the key point is to bring that down at the end, get everybody together and get them to compare the original picture with the drawings, get them to compare the original picture with the sentences, get them to compare the sentences to each other. Katerina has asked, is the image mentioned in the description? You should just be writing about the image. So you see a picture, imagine our picture of the camel in the desert. I might write the sentence, there is a camel in the desert and the sky is blue. And that can be my description. So I give that sentence to the next person and they have to draw the picture I have described. So at the end, they will see the whole thing, but during the process, they only see what the person has given them. And it goes picture, sentence, picture, sentence, picture, sentence. You take a picture, you write a sentence. You take a sentence, you draw a picture. Lovely, straightforward activity. Always best done with small groups. I would say maximum 6, because after that, the pictures and the sentences really stop making any sense at all. And if you want to try this one in the digital age, messaging apps are absolutely brilliant for this. Now, I can draw a picture, I can take a photo of it on my phone, I can message it to my classmate if I want to. You can use whatever classroom management system you have in place if there is a communication functionality in there. Chat boxes in Google Meet, absolutely. Or even on Zoom, indeed. The only thing that we have to remember is that you only show one sentence or one picture to each person, and they cannot show it to anybody else. They have to either draw a picture or write a new sentence and pass that on. And then at the end, we share it all together. It's a really nice, quick activity that encourages children to start doing a bit of writing practice and to move on and start to enjoy writing a little bit, maybe, hopefully. Okay. Ooh. So our final section of this webinar is all about error correction and feedback. And if we think back to the problems that we talked about at the beginning, as teachers, I have been in the situation where I just go, okay, I don't know how I can help this student. I have tried everything. I don't know where to go. And sometimes we feel like that. But how do the students feel? So I'm going to show you 4 direct student quotes. Things that real students have said about their experience with writing and teaching. My teacher corrects everything. When I get my work back, it's always full of problems. There's red pen everywhere. In class, we look at all of the mistakes that the teacher has found and we do it one by one, and it takes forever. It's like, I gave my teacher this lovely letter that I wrote to her, and she gave it back with some mistakes, but she didn't say anything about the content. Grammar and spelling aren't everything. And that is very true. So, what can we do in the classroom to make sure that our students are not getting horribly demotivated? Because we don't want to be the cause of their demotivation. So, a few things that we can do. Number 1, most important is to start ensuring that you are using drafting. Developing writing skills is a process. It takes time. Nobody picks up a pen and is a perfect writer the first time. J.K. Rowling sent Harry Potter to 1,000,000 different publishing houses before it got published. She wasn't perfect to start with. It takes time. And if we can encourage students to believe that part of that process is drafting, that when they give in their homework, it's not finished, the teacher will read it and they will give it back and you will take it away and improve it. This needs to become part of the writing process. And the earlier we start, the better. Because if students in primary school are used to doing drafts of their writing, then they're going to be better at it when they get to high school and university, where they will really need these skills. Giselle has suggested showing them a picture of big authors' drafts. Absolutely. If there is a favorite author that you have in your classroom, get some of those. Absolutely. Planning, drafting, editing, writing. It's part of the process. And I know that it takes time. And I know we don't always have time, but if we can make it into a habit, it's never going to be problematic. How do we teach drafting to grade 1 learners? Essentially, it's just the idea of getting them to take that correction back and redo it so that they get it right and then give it to you. And it can even be done at a word level. So, if you're writing and copying words and you copy the word wrong the first time, then you as the teacher go, okay, what's wrong here? And let's do it again and just rewrite that word for me. Yep, I prefer asking learners to do self-assessment using a dictionary, especially in the case of spelling errors. Absolutely, says Sarah there. Yeah, with older students, me too. But yeah, just make sure that we are practicing that idea of drafting right from the very beginning. As teachers, mark 1 or 2 error types only. We don't have to mark everything in every text. And for me, I always use the writing syllabus as my guideline. Boana says learners might think drafting is repeating the entire work again and they get bored. Absolutely. That is why we need to start teaching them to do it. Yeah, so when we're marking 1 or 2 error types only, use your syllabus, use whatever you're following in writing. So if you have practiced adjectives in class this week, then we are going to mark especially for adjectives. Next week, we can mark for adjectives and adverbs. And every time we build on what we are doing. Okay. Third thing that I will say, and I cannot underline this enough, if you want to be an effective writing teacher, write a response to your students. The way that I think about it is that when a student does a piece of writing, they have taken the time to do it. When they hand us in their homework, they have spent possibly hours doing it. And if we just put a tick and a smiley face and write, good job, that's really demotivating. I have put in so much time and effort, and my teacher didn't even really read it properly. Farhana has mentioned 2 stars and a wish as a good way of writing responses, and that works so well with children. So just if you're not familiar with 2 stars and a wish, the format is that the 2 stars are 2 clear, positive things about the task. So I really like the way you have used adjectives to describe all of the nouns in your writing. And I think it's excellent that you have remembered to use capital letters and full stops for every sentence. So that would be my 2 stars. The wish is the one thing that they can improve next time. So next time, I wish that you would check the names of the characters have capital letters as well. And it gives them clear guidance. Now, when we put in that effort, the students feel much more engaged with their writing, it feels much more worthwhile, and it gives them a clear idea of what they can do in the future to get better. If there are common errors in the classroom, if you notice that every single student is making similar mistakes, collect those mistakes together, use them for games, use them for quizzes. Don't feel like you need to mark absolutely everything on the paper. You can collect those up and dedicate specific time to that in the classroom. And the final thing that I want to say about error correction and feedback is award marks for creativity, not just accuracy. Grammar and spelling are important, but they are not everything. Read what they are saying, understand the message, and respond to that as well. So make sure that when you're doing your marking, give them points for their ideas and their imagination. It's not, it's not just accuracy that you're trying to get out of your students in the classroom. It's creativity as well. All right, so a few little top tips, things to remember going forward. Our young learners are hugely creative, and there are lots of ways that we can do that in the classroom. But it's also true to remember that older people are creative too, and all of these activities work with older learners as well, not just kids. Images are a great prompt for imagination. As we all know, the idiom is a picture paints 1,000 words. And it's very, very true. If you are finding that your students don't have anything to say or don't know what to write about, show them a picture, give them a starting point. Limited vocabulary can still make great writing. And this comes back to the question that I put on the shelf earlier, which is, how can we use these activities with second language learners, with people that are learning English? And you absolutely can. If you've got a second language class, then the the students can still be creative and can still make something brilliant, even with limited vocabulary. And of course, everyone has something to say. Anjali has asked, if we mark 1 or 2 error types, won't the parents feel that the teacher is not competent enough to correct writing skill? That is a very important question to ask. And the key to that, I will always say, is clear communication with the parents. Make sure that if that is your process, that your department head, your head of year, your school principals understand why that is the process, and that that is communicated to parents. Because you're absolutely right. There are always parents that will go, I can see this mistake here. The teacher didn't correct it. The teacher is a bad teacher. So make sure that you're clear with your communication. Salma has asked, how can we engage our students into writing more? Little and often. It's like everything. Make it short, make it achievable. So make them successful, and do it as often as you can. And the more often that your children succeed at writing, the better they will go. We have got to the end and we've got a few minutes, so we've got quite a few questions coming through. So I will try and address as many of these as possible. If you don't want to stay for questions, that's absolutely fine. If you do have them, I will try and do answer as many as possible. So Heba has asked, what about children who struggle with basics of sentence structure and still have a long way to go to write a coherent sentence? ESL students specifically. Step by step, build it up. It doesn't matter whether you are writing in a native language or a non-native language, you still make the same mistakes in the same order. So start at word level and start, and build that up. But make sure that what you're doing is achievable. Make sure that you are giving good models and make sure that you are giving effective feedback. But there's absolutely no reason why these activities won't work with non-native English-speaking students. Salma, I think your question is in reference to little and often. She's written, or you mean once a week? No, Salma, I mean 5 minutes every lesson. Little and often. There is always an opportunity for a quick writing task. It doesn't have to be a story every time. It can sometimes just be a sentence or a little writing game. And if you can throw in a quick game of Scrawl into the end of each of your lessons, the children will love you forever. What is the right age for cursive writing? It depends on the curriculum that you are using, Satvinder. It usually is stated in every different curricula in different stages. The general consensus is that children have to be able to form individual letters before they start cursive. I personally don't write cursive. I always use unjoined handwriting as an adult, so I'm not always the best model, but I would recommend whichever curriculum you are using, go with the guidelines, because in terms of whether there is a right or a wrong age for it, I don't think anybody on earth can agree over that. What I will say, in the UK, students are supposed to be writing in cursive completely by grade 3. So they have to be 100% in that by grade 3. Printed form goes well for elementary learners. Printed form goes well for me as well. Is it good to give learners a picture or an image, discuss it, then ask them to describe the image in maybe 5 sentences? Absolutely, great fun. Great fun to be had with that. Is it advisable to provide value points for writing tasks? Why not? It's as long as you are unified with the other teachers in your school and you are working to the same thing and the children are clear what you are marking for, there is absolutely no problem with that. Don't just mark for spelling and grammar. They are not the only thing on earth, says the English teacher. How to help young learners with spellings? Shalini, the answer to that question for me will always be get a decent phonics series and get them working on phonics, because it will really, really help. Is forcing children to write in cursive needed? I'm going to step away from that argument. My personal opinion is it's always better to be able to do something and then choose not to. But being able to write in cursive makes it much easier to read in cursive. So I would say, yes, it is a good idea, but I don't do it in my real life. All right, that seems to be the end of the questions. So I am going to pass that over back to Rainer, who is going to give you a little bit of Feedback? Oh, there is one more question, which is about library time. Any of these activities would work in library time. Do use writing in libraries. And, libraries are full of books, and books are a source of inspiration. So get all of that time sorted. Okay. All right. Raina, over to you for the end of session information. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Charlotte. I'm just shocked that the internet actually was maintained throughout this session today, because I had a few struggles today, but all good. I'm so happy. I mean, I'm so excited that I have no words. So that's the first thing. So thank God for the internet.
Yes, I think definitely this is the webinar recording that we send out to everybody. So for all of you that are in this webinar, remember it. You are the ones that are going online.
Exactly. I think that's the first thing. So firstly, thank you to the internet. Secondly, thank you so much, Charlotte. It was fantastic. I think the attendees, as you can see, are super engaged, and they have been throughout the day. We've delivered this session 3 times today to cater for people in different regions.
That Nikolai has been in this session 3 times.
If you have, welcome for the 3rd time. There you go. In that case, just thinking of some of the information you may need. Some attendees have asked about CPD certificates and the PowerPoint slides. As always, these will be provided via email within 3 to 4 weeks. We have extended the time that you receive this just because we have ongoing webinars almost every week at the moment. If you would like updated information on webinars and upcoming webinars, please do look at our website and go to the section focusing on webinars. We also have a home learning content page which has resources for primary literacy, science and maths as well, so do check that out as well. Just lastly, if you would like to email us with any comments or feedback, do feel free, and do follow us on social media with the latest information. So I think that's all for now. Just to say once again, thank you so much to Charlotte for a fantastic day of webinars.
Thank you to all of the participants for your ideas and for getting so involved. I know it's always weird when you're in a digital landscape. So thank you very much to everybody.